Hey everybody, good morning. It's Tuesday. How are you? I hope that you're doing well. It's a beautiful day out where I live. Still a little warm, not quite as warm as it's been in the recent days, but beautiful day out. I'm going to try to get outside and enjoy some of the day, so I hope that it's beautiful weather out where you are too. I'm so glad I get to spend Tuesday with you in our continuing quest to learn more about data science and the different practices and the different things that are involved in the world of data science. So really glad to be spending another Tuesday with you. It looks like we already have some people joining in on the chats, which is great. As always, we like to start off with our global roll call, and it helps helps us all understand the global nature of the data science community. So if you want to tell us the city, state, province, country that you're from, would love to hear about it. I see people that are always joining in on Instagram, other places that maybe are a little bit shy, and that's okay. But I encourage people to introduce where they're from, just to kind of keep the chats inclusive and keep everybody participating. So you're welcome to do that. Would love to hear from you. So while I give you some time to join in and let us know where you're from, I always like to start off with an opening note. And today I'd like to talk to you about the different data sources that are available really all across the world. And that's one of the things that I think is really important when it comes to finding your research projects, finding data that you want to use to enrich your other projects, and really just kind of exposing yourself to working more and more with data. I think it's a very healthy process for you to always look at different data sets, whether they relate to you or not, whether they're from another country or from another industry that, maybe is not your selected country or industry, but it's good to, still expose yourself to that and get more experience. So for example, today there was an article that caught my eye about the high rates of emigration from New Zealand. Apparently, New Zealand is having high unemployment rates, high inflation, and it's causing a lot of people to leave New Zealand. And the article quoted an agency called Stats New Zealand, which is the New Zealand's arm, New Zealand government's data arm that provides a lot of statistics. I went to their website. The website seems to be pretty nice, has a lot of different statistics there. I couldn't quite find the raw data, but I didn't really look a lot either. But I think that that is something where I'm not from New Zealand. I don't have plans to visit New Zealand, but it's still data. So as a data scientist, I'm still curious. I'm still curious about how they collect it. What's their methodology? How do they store it? What's available to the public? Do they have open data initiatives? So on and so forth. It's always good to see these things. It's always good to keep your mind open to whatever the data may be and still explore it, even though it may not lead to like a major project on your end. I've always told people that a good data scientist doesn't even need column names for their data, right? I should be able to, if you're telling me that you're a talented data scientist, I should be able to give you a data set that doesn't have column names. It just has A, B, C, D as the columns. And you should be able to tell me something about the data set, right? The data set itself really doesn't mean anything to you, the source of it per se. It's really the numbers, right? The numbers and the numbers behind the data and the methodology that you apply to those numbers, right? You should have a methodology to be able to say, oh, okay, yeah, I found these items and these items are interesting, right? And you should be able to do that without knowing anything else about the data set other than some generic column names. By looking at other data sets, by looking at things like that Stats New Zealand or other articles that are out there, it's going to help you develop those skills and develop those capabilities to be able to say, yeah, okay, I can work with just about any data set that comes my way. That'll be very important once you're working in a corporate environment where you're going to have all different kinds of sources coming at you, sources that are coming at you quickly, where somebody's going to approach you and say, here's some data. Can you tell me, can I get a report from you on it in the next 3 hours or so, right? You're only going to develop that speed and those abilities by doing it over and over again by the various data sets that you come across. So I encourage all of you to seek out those data sets, seek out those opportunities when you're reading things or you come across articles, to go ahead and look at the data and start exploring it with your data science eye, because I think that can be a very valuable exercise and a way for you to build your skills. Even if you're already a talented data scientist, looking at data continuously kind of helps sharpen the saw, as we say here in the US, to work with different data sets at any given time. So I'm already seeing some people join in on Instagram. I'm seeing people introduce themselves. Please go ahead and keep on continuing to do that. Let us know your city, state, province. Always good to hear about people from all over the world. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in, start looking at some of our messages in our chat. So Landry, there seems to be a fight for a first place to come into the chat. So Landry is putting down a flag and saying, nope, today I'm going to be first. So it's good to see you, Landry. Hope you're doing well. Landry is our man in Belgium. Hope you're doing well out there, Landry. Hope Belgium is treating you well. Rohan's another one of our competitors. Usually comes in first, but Rohan, today you were bested by Landry. So Rohan says, good morning, Dennis and all. Rohan from Vizag, India. It's nice of you to greet everybody, Rohan. Very nice of you. But yep, everyone's doing well here, Rohan. Thanks for joining. Rex, our moderator in New York City. How are you, Rex? Hope that you're well. Rex is our able monitor on our Twitch chat. Twitch. So shout out to Rex there for helping out with the moderation. Thank you so much. Ravindra says they are from Bangalore, India. Very cool, Ravindra. I don't think I've seen you before, so welcome to the chat. Hope you're doing well. If you have questions on data science, if anybody has questions on data science, I like to keep my streams open-ended for those types of questions. So let me know. Let me know in the chat, if you want to talk about anything or anything on your mind, any interesting data you've come across or doubts you may have. I do my best to help. Sanal Ariyaratne, I think I got that right. Maybe you can tell me in the chat if I got that right. That sounds like I got it right. Colombo, Sri Lanka. Nice. Very cool. We've had a couple of people from Sri Lanka, not too many, but good to see you here. FXT7Y from Cairo, Egypt. Very cool. How are things in Cairo? I imagine that it's very hot there right now. I've always wanted to visit Egypt. I've been to other parts of Africa, but never Egypt. Would love to go there sometime. But thanks for joining us. I don't think I've seen you before, so this is your first time. Welcome. Leo, my good friend Leo, how are you? Dennis, hope you had a good time yesterday. Thank you. I appreciate you checking in, and I did have a good time yesterday. So Leo is referring to my dinner out yesterday. As I've mentioned before, I live in Las Vegas, and one of the advantages of Las Vegas is that there's a lot of conferences here, and obviously a lot of data science conferences. So I have a lot of colleagues that come in through town, and a lot of them reach out and say, "Hey, I'm going to be in town. Would you like to have dinner?" And I did that yesterday with a colleague. He is a vice president, head of innovation, which means head of data science in most cases, for a large financial services company here in the US. And they have some international offices. So he invited me to dinner. We had a really good time. Went to a great steakhouse, and lots of good steakhouses here in Las Vegas. And it's really good to have that fellowship, right? Because we tossed ideas back and forth. He shared some things he's looking at. I shared my perspective on a couple of different things. So it's really good, to kind of sit down with another data scientist and kind of talk things out and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Well, what are you doing about this? Oh yeah, we're doing the same thing. Or no, we're doing things completely different. It's good to have that back and forth. So I was able to do that yesterday, really grateful for that experience, really grateful for people's time, when they share it like that with me. Had some really good food. I posted a couple of pictures as I was getting ready to go, and also from the lobby of the hotel, because it's a beautiful hotel. I was surprised at how many people liked the Rolex picture. That was kind of shocking. So posted a couple just fun things, kind of different content. But appreciate all the feedback there. A lot more commentary on the Rolex than I would have thought. But nonetheless, appreciate the comments, and thought every once in a while it's good to post different content just to mix things up. So that was the intent yesterday. Talha, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, says, hello, Dennis. Talha also says, I missed a lot of your content. I am watching the starting chapters of ILP. Okay. I think you mean ILSA. I think is what you meant to write. Or ISLA. But good to see you, Talha. Hope you're doing well. Remind me where you're from. Okay, from Pakistan. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was gonna say Pakistan, but good to see you, Talha. Hope you're doing well out there. Daniel, Daniel, you're from Los Angeles, right? I think. You guys had an earthquake there yesterday, right? Daniel says morning all. Good to see you, Daniel. Vincent Sangudi says hello, Vincent from Kenya. Okay, very cool. We get a few viewers from Kenya, so glad to see that you're here, Vincent. Vincent, I don't think I've seen you before, so welcome if this is your first time. Okay, so Sanal says yes, it is correct. So I pronounced that correctly. Sanal Ariyaratne. Ariyaratne. Yeah. Okay, good. I feel like there's a victory there when I get people's names right. Ishmael and Daniel, yes, we are definitely doing questions today. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, guys. I just want to get through people's introductions because I have a couple more. So feel free to tell us your city, state, province. Love to hear where you're from. Just to kind of build the global community here. Okay. I'm going to come back to that. Yassine, our good friend Yassine. Yassine from Fez, Morocco. Good to see you, Yassine. Hope you're well. So Yassine is one of our participants in the Discord channel. And in fact, I got to give a shout out to Yassine because he posted some really good stuff on our Discord channel. Really, a really thoughtful approach to some of the modeling that we were talking about during Sunday's class. So if you guys want to join in the Discord, it's a very active community. We're having a lot of different discussions. People post articles or images or just, things that they're working on, things that are fun. I also announced some of the live streams on there. It's a really good community. I think we have a really good conversation going. So shout out to Yassine for contributing to that yesterday. He added some thoughts on some modeling around feature selection that we did on Sunday. So if you guys want to join the Discord, Rex is providing the link there. So let me highlight that. Rex has put the link in the chat. That's the link to the Discord. We're having, it's really forming to be a good community. So if you want to join, keep the conversation going beyond the live streams, or if you want to ask your own questions in there, get help from the community, highly recommended you join. So thanks, Rex, for putting that up. Make sure okay, it looks like that's all the introductions, but Daniel adds, yes, I'm in South Pasadena, technically where the epicenter is. Oh, okay, very cool. Yeah, I was asking because I still have family in LA. I actually have family close to South Pasadena. But yeah, it seems like it was a pretty serious earthquake yesterday. And I think a lot of people are thrown off that it was so strong and in the middle of the day, right? That's not typical for earthquakes. But yeah, hope you're doing well. Hope your family's safe. It seems like there wasn't too many reports of destruction, but obviously something to keep an eye on. I think it has a lot of people in LA on edge. Okay, so I'm seeing some questions. So let me go ahead and start addressing some of those. Let me go back to my main camera. Okay, so Daniel says, is there a best city for data science, or does it just depend on the company? Great question, Daniel. I think it just depends on the company. Most companies nowadays are going to have some sort of innovation team or data science team or like a central data office. So you would most likely be, transferred or hired by whatever city those offices are based in. But I have not seen any one city being more dominant than others. Some people would say that there's a lot of AI and a lot of machine learning happening in New York, which is true. But I'm also seeing a lot of it happening like in Dallas, where a lot of companies have a secondary office, right? Dallas has become a really popular city for large companies to have secondary offices in. And also it's cheaper to operate in Dallas. But as far as like any dominant city, I don't think so. No. Really, and again, part of it is just your own skills, right? if you're talented and you show that you have good data science skills and you do well in the interviews, they'll find where to put you, right? They'll even give you a city preference, or I've been in situations where I'll be hiring in multiple cities, both in the US and abroad, because it can be hard sometimes to find the talented data scientists. So as long as you keep on working on your skills and keep on, developing yourself into a professional in the data science field, then location really is almost like a secondary concern. They'll find a place for you, right? So no, I wouldn't say that it's there's any one city that's dominant. It really just depends on the company that's willing to make the investment into data science and into really, kind of moving forward with an algorithmic approach. But great question, Daniel. Appreciate the question. Yeah, so Ishmael, go ahead and ask as many questions as you'd like. Balraj Singh says, hello, Dennis. Hello, Balraj. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining the chat. Feel free to let us know where you're from. Leo says, I'm in NYC. If someone wants to do a meetup, I'm down. Oh, very cool. That's at least 2 people from NYC. I lived there for a time. I would love to go back. So who knows? Maybe if there's a large enough meetup, I'd be willing to go out there. That could be fun to do an in-person meetup. Landry says, I would like to know your opinion on learning a low-level language like C# before Python. Could that make you a better programmer in the long run? Oh, wow. That's a great question, Landry. That's a really good question. I think that you're asking an excellent question, and I would encourage you to get more answers beyond mine, because I think different people would give you different answers. Okay? So I'll give you my answer, and I could see it both ways, but I'm going to go ahead and lean towards saying no. It's not so much about C#. It's more about the object-oriented approach that other languages take that Python doesn't. So here's the challenge with Python. The challenge with Python is that it suffers from its own success. Most of the examples out there are scripts, and a lot of the examples are in notebooks, right? Both of those are okay learning, but it's not really how you're going to use the language long term. You're going to use the language long term more towards an object-oriented approach and more writing programs, not scripts. So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards no, because it's not about learning C#, it's about learning object-oriented programming, and you can learn that aside from a particular language, right? Because object-oriented programming is like a theory, an approach, and then you use a language to kind of help illustrate it, right? Like if you were to go buy an OOP book right now, they would probably do it in Java or C#, but that's just an illustration, right? Like there's no reason why you couldn't take those same principles and apply it to Python. You know what I mean? So you're better off learning about object-oriented programming in the most generic way possible, and then taking what you've learned and find the equivalents in Python and doing it in Python. Aside from that, right, because I know that I'm focusing on object-oriented programming, I don't see other benefits to learning other languages. 2 reasons come to mind. One, most other languages are compiled. Python is not a compiled language, it's an interpreted language. So anything you'd learn in that process, you really wouldn't be able to carry over to Python, right? So that's the first reason I say that. And then the second reason I say that is, and here I'm responding specifically to C#, is that C# now is so CLR based, right? So for those of you that don't know, CLR stands for Common Language Runtime, and it's basically one of the core objects within .NET that makes it possible for you to work with different languages, right? You can work with C#, you can work with VB.NET, you can work with other languages, and then the CLR, everything feeds into the common language runtime, the CLR, which then puts it out into, I believe it outputs P code. Somebody can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but it outputs P code, which then, can be interpreted by any machine out there, right? So that's like where it kind of becomes a little hazy, right? Where does learning all of that help you in Python? Not really, right? So that's kind of why I give that, Landry. So I hope that helps you. If you need more clarification, go ahead and, add it in the chat. But I would say no, just practice more and more with Python. Get away from notebooks, get away from scripts, start writing programs. I did a video on this. The video on YouTube is how to write professional data science code. So if you want to look that up. But yeah, Landry, that's what my gut tells me, that you're better off just learning OOP and going from there. Okay? Hope that helps. Great question. You guys are, what a strong start to the questions. You guys are doing awesome here. Okay, so Ishmael says, do you think a person that has had a hard time understanding math can become a data scientist in that? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Ishmael. Absolutely you can. Look, I've said this before, I've done content on it before, and I get some crazy replies to that. Do not let the math and data science intimidate you. It is nowhere near as prevalent as some of these influencers online will tell you, right? In the real world of data science, you use libraries. You are basically never writing your own math code to work in data science. If you're doing that, if you're spending all this time writing formulas into math code, you are doing data science wrong, period. That is not how it's done in the real world. I mean, it concerns me when I see that type of content, because do you guys realize the number of mistakes that you can make translating formulas into code? That is super risky, super risky. And besides, in a corporate environment, if you ever did that, you'd have to go through all these audit boards and legal reviews and all this stuff to be able to even start working with that code, right? Because the danger is not in the big errors, right? You can find those right away during the development process. The danger is in the tiny, tiny little errors, these little things you might have transposed in your code, right? Like 2 little items that you transpose that are going to cause problems that you won't discover until 5 years from now, right? See, when people say you shouldn't do the coding, they think oh, well, I'll find the errors, because the code won't run. It's not that. It's the errors that will run, that will give you wrong answers for 5 years before somebody finally stands up and says, oh, wait a minute, I think that code is wrong, right? So trust me, don't be intimidated. You'll be just fine. Data science is done with libraries anyways. I encourage you to still learn the theory behind it, understand what's happening underneath the hood, but on a day-to-day basis, you are not going to be using math or formulas or latex or whatever, right? I want you to have an understanding, right? So why are neural networks so processing intensive, right? Why do you need an activation function? Why do you need performance metrics, right? So I want you to know things like that. But as far as like deep maths or stuff like that, not needed. And it's actually one of the things we covered. By the way, we keep on referring to classes. We're doing classes on this book, Introduction to Statistical Learning. We're doing these every Sunday, 1500 GMT. You're welcome to join. And in here, the authors themselves say that deep, these deep graduate level maths are not needed in data science. It's one of the 4 basic tenets that they lay out in this book. So it's not just me saying this, experienced authors are also saying this. So Ishmael, don't be intimidated by it. Maybe you're not great at math, but as long as you're willing to understand the initial concepts and why certain formulas are used and what some results can mean, I think you'll be just fine in data science, okay? So I hope that helps. If you have more questions, let me know in the chat below, okay? Balraj Singh says, I am from India. Welcome, Balraj. What part of India? You can't just tell me India. India is a massive country. Voldemort Gaming, good to see you again. How are you? Hello, sir. I'm finding a little bit hard to land my first job as a data analyst or data scientist because experience is needed in most of the job posts. How can I get experience without a job? Okay, I'd have to know a little bit more about how you're going about it. But are you, do you have a portfolio? Do you have a degree? Are you discouraged from applying because of what the post says? Or are you being told? Like, are you being turned away because of the experience? You know, let me know a little bit more, Voldemort. Give me some more details in the chat below. Help me understand, like, what part of it is being difficult for you, because there's different parts to a job search, right? So give me a little more detail. I'm curious. Okay. Leo says, fun story. My accuracy test for a model after Sunday's class went from 79 to 87 only by using like, oh, that's wonderful. That's awesome. So Leo, tell us more about that. Are you using like your own model or the model from the class? Because Yassine has obviously done some work on the model for the class. But let us know more about that, Leo. Like, what kind of model was it? And so here's the thing, guys. This is good practice. So Leo, I'm going to challenge you a little bit, okay? So a good data scientist not only gives a result, but they also give a rationale, right? Because your result could be wrong, even though you have some very solid rationale behind it, right? So you always want to present your rationale just in case you're wrong, right? So Leo, what is your assessment? What is your rationale for why Lasso helped you? I'm curious about that because it's a significant change, right? That's like a 10% change that you saw, which is fantastic, right? But why? Like, what's your rationale? What's your explanation for what happened? Okay. And by the way, for those of you that are curious, you know, you don't understand what the lasso that Leo is referring to. As I said, we're going through the book. We're doing a chapter every Sunday. This past Sunday, we did chapter 6, which is fantastic. We're more than halfway through the book. I'm really proud of everyone that's been going to the class. And one of the challenges in data science is, how do you know what features to use? Right? You're just going to be given this data set, or you're going to create the data set yourself via your pipelines. But then what? The world isn't labeled. The world doesn't tell you what the relevant features are. You have to determine what they are, and you have to determine it in a scientific way, right? In a scientifically sound way. So lasso is one of the techniques that we learned this past Sunday. So I'm really happy to see both Leo and Yassine taking that and applying it, right? Because I mean, you guys are really getting it, right? Because you're supposed to learn and then apply. Data science is an applied science, right? So I love the fact that both of you are learning and then saying, hey, I was working on this other problem and what I learned today might apply to that. Let me go back and do that. So Leo, props to you and Yassine. So let me know, Leo, like I'm getting the impression that this was some other model that you were working on. And I say that because on Sunday, we got nowhere near 0.79. We actually got terrible results on Saturday. On Sunday. So I'm curious, Leo, let us know more about what you were working on there. Joseph says, hello, Dennis and everyone. I hope everyone has a great Tuesday. Joseph, you're late. Good to see you, Joseph. And you know what, Joseph, today the little moderator wrench is actually showing up next to your name. Joseph is one of our moderators on YouTube and on Discord. So shout out to Joseph and everybody else who volunteers and helps out as a moderator. Really appreciate their efforts. But yeah, I'm glad to see that now there is a wrench next to your name so that people can see that you're the moderator. I don't know why I wasn't doing that previously, but it's doing it now, which is fantastic. Okay. So Nabil says, hello, I'm Nabil, originally from Algeria and currently based in Paris. Very cool. I think you've been on our chats before because I remember somebody else saying that. Could you please explain the difference between a data engineer and a data scientist? Yeah, sure. Common question. So when you think of a data engineer, you should also be thinking about data pipelines. And how do you get from a universe of data, right, into a format that can be used by data scientists? And that's the pipeline, right? That's the pipeline that you are creating to say, I'm going to have all this data that's out there, and I'm going to identify the pieces I need. And how do I maintain that in a cohesive format, in an updated format, in a format that maintains sound data quality, right? Those are all data engineering tasks. And from there, a data scientist would pick up that pipeline and start working with the data in their own way. And then generally speaking, the biggest difference there is that they focus on modeling, right? They actually take that data and create the algorithms, the models from that. So that's kind of like the two differences. The data engineer is, kind of collecting and coalescing all the data into a usable format that is then picked up by data engineers and data analysts, by the way. I forgot to mention data analysts. That is then picked up by a data scientist to do the modeling. And then also realize that there is implications on the prediction side, right? Once a model is done, a model needs new inputs, right? It's going to be providing inputs and outputs, right? So the data engineer also facilitates that code, those pipelines, to say, and this is how we're going to collect the new information that's coming in and return the predictions or the classification or whatever the case may be. But that's essentially the difference. I hope that helps. But also keep in mind, guys, as I've said before, data science teams aren't that big, right? By and large, they're still fairly small teams out there. So you're not always going to have a data engineer available. They might hire you as a data scientist, but you're still going to be doing data engineering tasks. You're going to be collecting your own data. That's not uncommon, right? That happens on teams. The vice president that I spoke with yesterday, again, really talented guy, head of innovation, large company. I don't want to say the company name, but if you're in the US, you would absolutely recognize the company. And his whole team is 10 people. Okay, large financial company, right? He's based in New York, works in one of the sky reses, as big a company as you can get. And his data science team is 10 people, right? So you're going to be joining teams that are 3 people, 4 people, maybe 5 people, right? For me, when I lead teams, my bigger teams are maybe 12 people, 16 people, depending on whether I have a summer analyst or not, or summer analysts, right? Because sometimes I get multiples. So don't get too caught up in these differences, because you might be the data engineer and the data scientist, right? Or you might need to step in and help one of your colleagues, one of your fellow data scientists who's working on a big project. They might need you to kind of play the role of the data engineer for a month or whatever, right? To kind of help them with the pipelines. So I'm happy for the question. I know that data engineering is kind of gaining steam on social media. It seems like everybody's talking about engineering on Twitter right now. But don't get too caught up in that role, because you might be doing both of those jobs. Okay. So thanks for the question, Nabil. Balraj says, Dennis, today is my first day on your channel. I just want to know that I have around 10 years of banking experience and loans and advances, and now I want to transition to data science. Need your guidance. Okay, well, welcome, Balraj. I'm glad you found my channel. So Balraj, if it looks like you're on YouTube, if you go to YouTube, my YouTube channel, and you search Data Scientist Roadmap for Students, that is a video that I made both for students and for people that I want to make a career change into data science. In addition to that, you can also look at my personal my podcast episode, how I made the transition into data science, because I also had about 10 years of experience when I made the transition. And in there, I lay out my entire process for how I did it. So feel free to look at those 2 resources. They're both very long. They might take you a little while to get through, but I lay out what I've done, because I have empathy for you, because I also made a mid-career transition. Now, I was coming from a programming background, so that kind of helped. But yeah, it can be done. It's going to require work on your part. Maybe some extra classes, or, some formal classes, I should say. But it can be done. It can be done. And your business experience will help you in the long run because you'll be able to talk to stakeholders better than most data scientists will. But you got to get to the point where you've earned the credentials to work as a professional in the field, right? So, I commend you for, making that shift, but it's going to take some work to, to get to that level where you can put yourself out there as a data scientist, okay? Palki, our good friend Palki. Palki, I believe you're in Pakistan too, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Palki says, I'm starting my journey in data science. I love inferential statistics, but not good at number crunching and quick calculation like percentages, ratios. How can I improve this? Should you be quick at this? I don't know if you should be quick at this, right? Kind of a double-edged sword to be quick at calculations like that, right? But I get it. I know why you would want that. I kind of take pride in that. So, Palki, I don't know. I don't know if I'm actually recommending the book, but I have recommended in the past a book called Engineering Mathematics by K.A. Stroud. If you go to my Instagram, it's one of my highlighted books in my stories. And the reason why I like that book is because the author, it's this big, serious math engineering book. It's a very thick book, well over 1,000 pages. But that entire book starts with a discussion on estimation. And the author talks about how most math is really just very sophisticated estimations, right? And that chapter really spoke to me because it really made me understand how whenever something comes across your desk or whenever something, you should never think about numbers as being on their own, right? Numbers kind of live with other numbers. They live in ranges, they live in distributions and things like that. So that's one of the things I incorporated early on in my thinking. Whenever somebody tells me a number, or I hear a statistic, I always try to think about not the number, but the ranges of that number, or the estimates of that number, right? Or when you come across different problems, like, is inflation going to go up next year up, yes or no, right? You should be able to come up with like a general estimation to say, okay, well, this is what's happened. This is what I think is going to happen. And if I do this, yeah, I think it's going to be around this, right? Working on that on a continual basis on as many numbers that come across you as you can is a super valuable exercise. And that's how I think you can get to that point where you'll be quickly able to estimate numbers and come up with percentages, right? Because now you've constantly done it throughout your life, right? So I would challenge you that anytime from here on in, so starting from right now, anytime you come across a number or a problem or some projection, come up with your own estimates. Come up with your own ranges for that number, especially if you're talking about inferential statistics, right? Inferential statistics is nothing but ranges and distributions, right? And what it means for the future, right? So you just got to practice it on a continual basis. But, that's what I would do. Just think about the world around you in estimates, because everything is an estimate essentially, right? I mean, even the best algorithms in the world are still probabilities. So just think of it that way. It's something that's going to come with time, right? There's no way to teach that, but it's also easy to practice. You just need to keep at it on a continual basis. Okay. So I hope that helps you, Palki. Okay. Michael says, hello, Dennis. Michael here from Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome, Michael. Good to see you, my friend. What's a typical day in the life of a data scientist? I keep on getting that question. I think I'm going to do some content around it eventually. So it's a difficult question to answer in a short live stream, but I'll tell you this. There is a lot more conversation with stakeholders and a lot more collection of data than you think there is. Conversations with stakeholders and collection of data and the preparation of that data is easily 80% of any data scientist day. Anybody who tells you that is lying to you. They simply don't have experience in actually working in the field. Oh, but you got to know all this math. Oh, but you got to be be a top coder with Python. Oh, but this and this. It's about people and about data. That's the typical day of a data scientist. So, by the way, you should infer, right? Speaking of inferential statistics, you should infer that when I say that you're talking with stakeholders, I mean business conversations, not technical conversations, right? You are talking to them in business terms because that's what they understand and that's what they want from you, right? They don't want code from you. They want business impact, business results from you, right? Making sure that they're involved and that you're getting feedback from them is a huge part of the process. Very, very important. And then collecting data is also a big part of your day. That's one of the challenges I see moving from academia into the real world of data science. Or when people ask me about Kaggle competitions or things like that. All of those sources give you the data nicely, neatly packaged and ready to go. The real world is nothing like that. So collecting data from different sources, the pipelines, the permissions, the updating, the checking the quality of the data, that's like a lot of your day, right? So I'll stop there. Like I said, I want to do more content on this later, kind of in the future. But just keep that in mind. It's a lot more business conversations and a lot more data collection than what you think it is. Okay? So Talha says, so as I said earlier, I am watching your every Sunday live on ISLA, Introduction to System Gen. Yep. I am on the first chapter, so is it a right approach as a beginner? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Feel free to join us during the live conversations because I think we're having a lot of really good conversations. I structure the classes so that I ask a lot of questions and expect that feedback, and people have been doing great with that. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to take the book and break it down into like understandable pieces because I think I'm pretty good at that. It's one of my skills. But I'm also giving you guys like the real world stuff. And I've said that in the classes, where I'm saying, hey, the authors talk about this, but I'm going to skip it because I'm not sure how relevant it is to the real world, or there's better ways to do this. There's more, there's, since the book was written, there have been other methods that have developed that might be better. So those are the two things I'm giving you during the class. And I think that makes it accessible for a beginner. I think in most cases, it's still going to require a lot of work from you. And as I said in the first class, I am not promising that you will be ready for a job at the end of this, but you're going to have a pretty good foundation, right? Because I think it's very hard to find any professional data scientists out there that haven't gone through this book. I mean, in fact, I brought it up last night to my friend that I had dinner with, and I said, yeah, I'm teaching the Introduction to Statistical Learning book. And he immediately knew it. He was like, oh, the yellow book. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And he was like, yeah, that's like the Bible of data science. And it is. I mean, you'll be hard pressed to find a professional data scientist that hasn't gone through that book. So yeah, I mean, forget all the YouTube tutorials, all the influencers that are telling you how important math is. Do the book, come to the Sunday classes, and I'm going to try to break it down for you as much as I can for beginners. So thanks for the question there, Talha. Diwakar Kumar. I hope I got that right. Right now I'm working in thermal power plant as an efficiency engineer. It's more like technical analysis, but I want to switch into core data analysis and data science. How can I do the transition? As I said, feel free to go to my YouTube channel. I see that you're on Instagram, but feel free to go to YouTube. 2 sources: Data Scientist Roadmap for Students and How I made a mid-career transition into data science. Those are the 2 titles that are on my channel, and I lay it out for you there how I did it. It's going to require work, right? There's no shortcuts to becoming a data scientist, right? But it can be done. Okay, so I'd recommend those 2 resources. This reminds me of something. I watch a variety of different things on YouTube, just for my own personal interest and to also just get ideas for how to, structure my content and, my background and things like that. And there's this great guy I watch. His name is Nick Lewis. Maybe some of you know him. He's very popular. And he's basically like a interior designer. He's an interior designer, and he does content on interior design. So he's always looking at like TikTok and Instagram for the different pictures that people post and like the different trends that happen. And I was watching his channel this past Sunday, I believe. And he had a whole episode, or he has this whole series right now on being a de-influencer of interior decorating. So he's come up with this term of de-influencing, where he's kind of like trying to break those trends that all of the hot influencers are putting out there. And I'm going to do something similar, because I think that basically all of the people out there doing data science out there on Instagram or on social media in general they have ulterior motives. They want to sell you something, or in a lot of the cases, they just plain don't have experience in the field. They pretend they do, but they don't, right? There's a reason why so many of those videos are faceless and, generated by AI content, all this other stuff, right? So that's one of the de-influencer things I would want to do, where unfortunately data science has gained this reputation that all you have to do is take a boot camp and you'll be fine, right? You too can be a data scientist if you pass my boot camp, right? And, it really takes a lot more work than that, right? You can use a boot camp for a foundation, or, just to kind of settle your own curiosity, maybe explore if data science is for you. But anybody who tells you that you'll be ready after just a couple of months is lying to you. It's just not possible. That's just not how data science is done. Data science is a very serious profession. Nobody out there is saying, hey, you can become a lawyer in 3 months after finishing my boot camp, right? But for some reason, that's okay for data science, and that just doesn't make sense to me. So, as I said, even myself, even knowing my skills and the experience that I'm bringing to you, I am not promising you that after spending 8 weeks with me on the ISLA book, you're going to be ready for a job. You're going to be on your way to it. But I realize that it takes a lot more than that. So I say that to the people that are in the chat today that are looking to make a move. It's going to take time. It's going to take time, just like anything else good in life does. But it is possible. Okay? You just got to be able to put in the work and kind of get away from the thought that you can do it in a couple of months or whatever, because that's not really what data science is. So thanks for the question, Kumar. Vincent says, please expand on theory versus practical parts in data science. If I am new, should I start with Excel, SQL, then Power BI, or should I start practical working? You should start with neither one of those, actually, Vincent. I think that you should start with understanding the why and the when of data science. Because see, that's another thing that that I would do on the de-influencing series. People immediately jump to code, or they jump to algorithms, or they jump to machine learning. But those are all just tools. Tools are only helpful if you know when and how to use them, right? So the when is answered by data science methodology. What steps should you be doing at what time in the process? Because that's really what data science is. Data science is an approach to a problem. It's not the answer to a problem, right? Data science is not an algorithm. Data science is how you develop that algorithm. So, Vincent, I would suggest that you start with understanding the why of data science. Why do you need good data? Why do you need a data pipeline? Why do you need to follow the scientific process? What do you mean by experiments in data science? Right? Like, how are you actually writing experiments? How are you measuring experiments? Those are the things that are going to be valuable in terms of they're going to be valuable when you start working in Python, when you finally go and start working with algorithms, right? So that's what I would suggest to you or anybody else who's just starting out, is just take a step back, right? No need to jump into Python, no need to download a VS Code or anything. Just take a step back and say, well, what is it that I'm doing with data science? Why does it even exist as a field, right? That is where the value is going to come in to build upon that and understand things down the road. Okay, Vincent? All right, so Leo is going to share more of his model. So Leo says, it was a random forest model. I was struggling before with finding the right features. First, I decided to identify more features, K and N, and lassos after. Okay. The coefficient the coefficient shrinkage is a thing. Yes, it is. And later on, Leo says, can't say much, but it's a model for healthcare that helps diagnose based on blood test results. Okay. Okay, very cool. So Leo, you're bringing up a couple of really cool points. Two of them actually. So the first thing that's jumping out at me, and maybe it's jumping out to some of you too, is notice how you can apply lasso independent of the model that you are using, right? We talked about this a little bit about how you can create like this confluence of models. So you can use like a lasso approach to take your initial, 100 features and find the 6 features that are relevant. And then from there, that gives you a model. And you can proceed with that model if you want, but there's nothing preventing you from saying, well, let me see what this other model says. Or let me go ahead and use this and then let me run it through a cross-validation process. You can do that, right? Just because a process told you that these are the right features and the right coefficients doesn't mean you can't test it again, right? There's nothing written in stone that says, well, you can't try it twice. You can absolutely do that, right? So I like Leo's approach there, that he was saying, well, I was doing this in KNN or trying KNN, but then I wanted to try lasso, and that's perfectly okay, right? So I like that. And then Leo also mentions coefficient shrinkage. Why can I not talk this morning? Coefficient shrinkage. If that is new to you, or if you don't know, well, first of all, if you were in the Sunday class, you should know what Leo's talking about. And if you don't know what he's talking about, then start coming Sundays, 1500 GMT. But coefficient shrinkage is a very significant problem in data science, no matter what model you're working with. It kind of only came to light, or came more to the forefront once people started working more with neural networks, because it's more common in neural networks. But it's good to see, Leo, that you're learning from that. More importantly, I'm guessing here, Leo, that you learned that because you went through multiple iterations. And you probably saw that and say, well, wait a minute, in that model, the coefficient was pretty good, and now it's down to 0 here. Like, why is that? See, and this process that we're talking about, lasso, KNN, I try it here, I try it there, the shrink, this is data science. This is where the work of data science is. So, Michael asked about the day of the data sciences. Well, this is the other 20%. The other 20% is you sitting there saying, oh, let me try this. Oh, wow, that happened. Why did that happen? What's special about this column, this feature, that made the coefficient change so much? Or, hey, I tried this and I got a terrible result. I can get a better result in another model. So let me put that to the side and let me focus on. This is it, guys. This is the work of a data scientist, right? So I want you to think about that next time you hear about like these overly intensive math exercises or leak code or whatever else. That's not really where like the real world of data science is. The real world data science is sitting there and asking yourself questions and making those types of observations that Leo is showing here about the coefficients, right? This is really where like the mental process of data science is. And this is also what's going to separate you from your colleagues, right? This is kind of what separates the kind of sort of okay data scientist from the great data scientist. How much of that curiosity you're applying? How many questions are you asking? And then are you following up on those? Are you writing appropriate experiments to figure out what those values should be or why you got certain results? So Leo, I'm loving your approach. I think you're on the right track. Just keep it going. I love this stuff. You're learning the continual process, right? So you're doing great. You're doing great. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so Voldemort earlier had shared some stuff about a job search. So I built projects for my portfolio. I got an interview, and I had a great interview. There are people who are having experience for that role, and I have that skills that are more than enough. Got rejected. Voldemort, I'm sorry, but I'm not really seeing a question there. Are you saying that you lost the role to people without more experience? Or is that the feedback that somebody gave you from the interview? Let me know, Voldemort. I mean, at the very least, guys, realize not every interview is going to go well, right? You can practice, you can be ready, but you're going to blow an interview every now and then. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? You're going to feel maybe, a little bit rejected, a little bit embarrassed, but, it's going to happen. It happens to all of us, right? So don't worry too much about any one particular interview. It's going to happen. It's just the nature of the world, right? But Voldemort, if you want to give me more information, feel free to add it, okay? Michael says, is advanced data visualization important in data science? It can be. It can be, yeah. Depends on the organization, depends on the problem you're working on. But really, your goal with a lot of the visualizations is to remember that they're not for you, they're for your stakeholders. That's really who the visualizations are for, because they know their data best, right? Do not try to pretend to be that you're a business team when you're actually a technical team. Data science teams are technical teams. You shouldn't be making business decisions based on the visualizations that you make, right? So you should be making visualizations that enable your stakeholders to talk back to you and give you feedback. So in that case, yeah, it can be very important, right? So if you have a particular use case in mind, Michael, let me know. I'm giving you a generic answer here. But yeah, generally speaking, it is important. But it's more important for them than it is for you. Okay? So Daniel says, I took a big data class where we were using Google Cloud free trial and a Docker architecture to learn data pipelines. Is that a good way for you to learn? Do you have any other suggestions? Obviously I'm not familiar with this particular class, but if you're learning Docker architecture, that's a positive. A lot of people use Docker. More people use Docker than I give it credit for. If anything, I need to increase my personal Docker skills. I haven't really just invested a lot of time in it, but I should. But yeah, that sounds like a perfectly fine way to start, Daniel. The more important part is that you take it and then you apply it, right? You find a way to work with your own data. And take what you applied and then go build your own data pipeline completely away from any of the examples that they gave you, right? But otherwise that sounds like a fine way to learn, okay? Voldemort adds, also getting less calls from HR for some job posts for data analysts. I am having enough of skills that I know I can perform well that role. Still can't be able to break the door. Okay. So doing well in interviews and getting called for interviews are two completely separate things. So if you feel like you are not getting enough interviews, then that's an issue with your resume, not necessarily your interviewing skills. So Voldemort, I have a video online, how to write a data scientist resume. I suggest a format that I've used that I have found to be very beneficial. Because again, that's a completely separate issue from I don't have enough experience or I didn't do well in the interview, right? Work on the resume. Work on including your portfolio in the resume, by including links to articles or links to, links to however you want to present that, right? And then start worrying about, work on the resume, see an increase in the offers for interviews, and then start focusing on why those interviews are or are not going well. Okay, those are kind of two completely separate processes, okay? So I want you to think about that, and think about the impact your resume is or is not having. Maybe it's not as effective as you want it to be. Okay? Xdodecom says, I've always been shy because I'm more of an economist than a math guy. Okay. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with being shy. So you can start here by just letting us know where you're from, letting us know the city, state, country that you're from. Always like hearing that. Okay. Ravindran, introduce yourself. I don't think you told us where you're from. How do I get my first freelancing project as a freelancing data analyst? Be very, very, very good. That's really the only answer to that. You have to be a top analyst to do that. I mentioned this yesterday, and I mentioned this with my friend yesterday, because, I really believe in this. The problem with trying to be a freelance analyst or analytics company is that every company thinks they can do analytics well, right? So you have to show them why you are better than their current staff. Your clients are going to have the attitude, well, why do I need to hire you? I got 2 summer interns that can do my analytics, right? I don't necessarily agree with that approach, but it's the pervasive approach. That's just the way it is. So if you want to do a freelance data analyst, you have to show that you are like head and shoulders above everybody else. Otherwise, they're going to tell you, well, why? I have people that can do analytics, right? So I hate to drop that on you, but that's the reality of where we are with analytics right now. Kirti? Is it Kirti? Kirti says, hey. That's deep. That's deep, Kirti. Yassine says, hello, can you please provide some advice practices for someone with no professional experience in the field to benefit and learn the most from first experience? Yassine, it sounds like you're asking for a project idea. You know I don't give project ideas. But Yassine, you're on the right track, my friend. I love what you wrote in the Discord yesterday. So I'm going to go back to that view so everybody can see it. So in the Discord, if you want to join, feel free to join our Discord. Yassine provided a really great breakdown of the process that he went through to narrow down some of the items that we talked about on Sunday. And he identified one of the weaknesses in one of the techniques that we learn in the stepwise searches for your features. So Yassine, you're on the right track, my friend. Like you are fundamentally correct in the way that you're approaching things, right? So don't start changing things when you are on the right track. Keep going like this, right? So for somebody like you who's displaying this type of approach, go out and find an independent data set that's interesting. By independent, I mean a contemporary data set, right? Find a topic that interests you, find a recent article or study or something on that, and then do your research on that, and then write an article on what your research taught you. You practically did that already in the Discord, right? Now write it for more of a business approach, right? Write something that's suitable to post on LinkedIn. And keep on practicing that, right? Keep on building that skill. Keep on sharpening the saw. If you can do that, you'll be on your way to, being a pretty good data scientist, right? You're displaying some very good fundamentals in what you wrote in the Discord. Just do more of it. Do more of it on your own. Do more of it contemporary and write more about it, right? Show some business impact. Show some business results. If you can do that, you'll be on your way. You're already a third of the way there with what you did yesterday, right? So just keep at it. I think you're on a fine track. I don't want to see you change too many things because I really think you're on the right track. Okay. So Joseph says, how important is it to understand the inner workings of each package? I tend to want to understand all the details of how something works and functions, but this is something sometimes may not be effective. Great question, Joseph. So it depends on how you want to define inner workings. Because when you're talking about packages and libraries in the way that I encourage people to use them, right? Because I encourage people, don't worry so much about the math, use the libraries. It becomes like a metagame. And the metagame is not understanding the math and the inner workings. It's more about understanding the parameters that are available to you by the library, right? And Joseph, you've been attending our Sunday classes, so you've seen this, right? You've seen it where we adjust different parameters. Like we were adjusting the alpha on Sunday, or the week before we were adjusting the number of folds in the cross validation that we were doing, right? So it becomes a metagame where yes, you want to understand the parameters, and you can choose to go another level down, but that's where I think it becomes unnecessary. It's more about understanding what the parameters are, what they do, which ones you can tune, which ones you can't tune, and then learning how to work with them in code. That is where it really becomes very valuable to be able to say, oh, okay, yeah, I understand what the library is doing. These are the parameters I can tune. These are the required parameters. These are the optional parameters, and go on. So if that's what you mean by inner workings, then yes, absolutely you need to know that, right? And maybe you want to do some experimentation on your own, like, oh, okay, well, if I tune this, or or what's the range for that parameter that I can use? Maybe I can use a lower range, smaller range, things like that. That I would absolutely encourage you to research. But if you're talking about, well, I got to know the individual formula that's being used, that's a little bit too much, right? That's where I think you're kind of going beyond. You're kind of doing diminishing returns, right? There's other things you could be doing that are much more valuable to the data science process. Okay, so I hope that helps, Joseph. Great question. So Kirti says, hello, I'm a beginner watching all tutorials posted by you. Will it be a good start? Yeah, I mean, it'll help, right? It's a good foundation, right? I don't make any promises to anybody. I'm not here to sell anybody any get rich quick stuff, right? We don't talk about hacking the interview or any of that nonsense. It'll give you a good foundation, yes. More importantly, my specialty is I give you the real world foundation. I've been out there. I've hired people, fired people, delivered projects. So I give you like the real world twist to everything that I talk about. Because, some of the stuff you learn in school has applicability, others not. So yes, Kirti, I think you're on the right track there. Keep on coming back to the live streams or the Sunday classes. And, if you're comfortable participating, feel free. Some people just listen along and learn that way best. But I think it'll be a good foundation for you. Ancor CA says it's an ongoing process. I'm not sure what you were referring to there. So if I missed something, let me know, Ancor, okay? Leo says, not only for data science, developers and cybersecurity also got into that scam. Yeah, you're right, Leo. You're right. I really hate the fact that people are taking any opportunity to turn it into a product or turn it into a course or whatever that they can try to sell you. But yeah, cybersecurity does kind of suffer from the same thing. Cybersecurity is a very serious field nowadays, right? It takes a lot of training, a lot of certifications. So I'm doing my part, I'm trying to fight the good fight against all of that nonsense. Just trying to give you guys the real world that I've experienced. So yeah, so sorry to hear that you guys went through that, but I'm doing my de-influencing portions here. Talha says, I was overwhelmed and confused by that influence is completely messing up the data science career path. Yep. Never saw anybody explaining professionally the way you are explaining. Oh, well, thank you for that. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think it does send people down the wrong path. You're right about that. Too many bad dreams that have been sold, right? Yeah, and I do try to bring a professional approach to how I explain things because I've been out there in the real world. Most of these people haven't, right? I haven't seen anybody out there who does the real world view. They just haven't worked in the industry, period. What else caught my? Yeah. Okay. So Talha, here's the thing, and I want everybody to kind of learn from this because I'm kind of coming across this, right? So the challenge also is that I get a lot of people who tell me, "Oh, well, I heard interviewing for data science is hard. I heard that, the interviews are difficult and there's no jobs and the market's oversaturated because there's no jobs." Okay, but here's the thing. All right, here's the thing, guys. So we had this whole thing of people selling these dreams of hacking the data scientist interview and shortcut to being a data scientist, right? And people bought into that. And people all of a sudden started thinking, hey, I'm a data scientist. And then they started applying for jobs. And then they started interviewing for jobs. But then they ran into people like me, right? Because then I ask real questions that they can't answer. And I know this because I know how difficult it is to find a quality data scientist. When I was doing a lot of hiring, I kind of came up with a metric that I basically had to interview about 100 people to find one good data scientist. That was my metric. Like 90 to 100 people is what I had to interview for one data scientist, right? But it's because it was all these people who were, trying to take those shortcuts. So now all those people are the same ones coming back and saying, "Oh, the interviews are so hard. Oh, there's no jobs in data science. Oh no, it's saturated. You don't want to do that." But they're the same people that try to take the shortcuts. So of course they flunked the interview side because they weren't a data scientist to begin with, right? So I want you guys to keep that in mind now in the present day when you hear those same people talking like that. Because, okay, yeah, you think the market's saturated, you failed at the interviews, but were you a data scientist to begin with? Were you taking the right steps? Because I don't want those people to be clouding your judgment. To be saying, "Oh, well, I can't do it because I heard the interviews are hard. I heard this, I heard that." Just remember the source there, right? Because it's kind of coming around in that way, where those same people taking the shortcuts are the same ones now talking about how hard it is. Now, I get it. The hiring can be difficult. HR isn't always great. It can be a frustrating process. But the point is that if you dedicate yourself and you really want to become a data scientist and you really, take a professional approach to it, that comes out in interviews. I promise you that it comes out in interviews. You will stand out when you've put in the time, when you can walk in, knowing that you've put in the work. Because, I've been on the other side of that. I've had candidates who stand out to me because, they're so much better than everybody else because everybody else was taking the shortcuts, right? So if you don't take the shortcuts, I promise you that good things will happen in that same interview process that everybody else is complaining about. Okay? So keep that in mind, guys. I want you guys to, kind of keep a positive attitude about the interviewing because I know it's hard, right? It's not a perfect process. I get it. But you will stand out if you've put in the work. Okay? Rex is asking a great question, a good question for us to end off on here. Do you think that data science should be a card-carrying field profession like others, like medicine, lawyers, accountants, etc.? Rex, you're asking a really good question there because there perhaps should be like a national or international certifying organization. There's none that I know of, and I've looked. I don't know how you would do it, because there's so many specialties of data science. And it's so difficult to establish a certification entity that would be recognized, right? Like, how do you get that off the ground? Like, how do you start a bar exam for data scientists? I don't know if you can or can't. I'm sure that there's a way. And if there's somebody out there, some organization or some individual that wants to kind of lead that effort, I would support that effort. I wish I had the free time to pursue that because I think it would be interesting. So I personally would not be able to pursue that, but if other people out there are, I would be willing to, support them. But yeah, I mean, it's just, it would be nice. It would be nice if we did have some sort of certification like that, right? Now, having said that, would it solve some of the interviewing challenges and the HR challenges and all that? Not always, right? Some of those problems are going to be there no matter whether people are certified or not. Job searching is hard, right? No matter what industry you're in, whether you're a data scientist or not, right? Job searching is hard. But I do like that you're equating it with lawyers and doctors, because I make the same equations. I think it should be taken as a serious profession. But great question, Rex. I like that question as a question for us to close on. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question, but I think this makes for a natural stopping point in the stream. Really appreciate you spending time with me. Keep on coming back. I stream every day, 1500 GMT. Welcome to come back and share your thoughts, or also join our Discord. Our Discord has conversations where, if I don't get to your question, feel free to put it out there to the community, right? The community can also help each other. Thank you so much. Appreciate all of your time. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your families, and I'll see you next time.